There's a woman named Tasha. She's the kind of person you might pass by on the street and never know the battles she's fighting. On the outside, she looks like any other woman, strong, composed, and determined. But if you look a little closer, you'll see the quiet storm behind her eyes, the weight she carries in her posture, and the story written in the lines of her face. Tasha's journey is one of resilience, of facing hardship after hardship, and still finding the strength to get up every morning and keep going. She's been walking through life like she's carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Every step she takes feels heavy, as if she's dragging invisible chains behind her. The city moves around her, cars honking, people laughing, life going on. But for Tasha, each day is a struggle just to put one foot in front of the other. She moves through crowds, but she feels alone, isolated by the burdens she carries. Sometimes she wonders if anyone notices the pain she tries so hard to hide. For 12 long years, she's been caught in a cycle of pain and struggle, struggling with heartbreak, health issues, financial hardships, and feelings of hopelessness. It's not just one thing, it's everything, all at once. There were days when her heart ached from loss, nights when her body hurt so much she could barely sleep, and mornings when the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen table felt like a mountain she'd never climb. Doctors' visits brought more questions than answers, and every setback seemed to push her further into despair. She's felt the sting of disappointment, the ache of loneliness, and the constant pressure of trying to hold it all together for herself and those who depend on her. She's tried everything, medications, hustle, even praying, but nothing seemed to change. She's sat in waiting rooms, hoping for a miracle cure. She's worked late into the night, chasing opportunities, trying to make ends meet. She's knelt in church pews, whispering prayers through tears, asking for strength, for healing, for a sign that things would get better. But no matter what she did, the pain lingered, the struggles persisted, and hope felt just out of reach. Each attempt to fix her life seemed to end in disappointment, leaving her feeling more defeated than before. She felt trapped, like she was in a prison she couldn't escape. The walls weren't made of bricks and mortar, but of fear, doubt, and exhaustion. Sometimes she'd sit by the window, staring out at the world, wondering if she'd ever be free from the pain that held her captive. The darkness in her room mirrored the heaviness in her heart, but even in her lowest moments, a small spark of hope remained, a quiet voice inside her that refused to be silenced, whispering that maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. See, life had dealt her some tough cards. She'd been betrayed, hurt, and let down so many times she almost gave up hope. Every day felt like a battle, and the heaviness just kept growing. Sometimes she'd look into the mirror and wonder if she'd ever find peace or happiness again. But deep down there was a flicker of hope, a small voice whispering, "There's gotta be more. God's got a plan for you." Still, she felt distant from it all, tired, worn out, almost defeated. One day, as she was just walking through her neighborhood, the sun was shining down, casting long shadows on the cracked pavement. The air was thick with the sounds of everyday life, children laughing in the distance, the hum of cars passing by, and the faint aroma of someone grilling nearby. She moved slowly, her mind heavy with thoughts, each step echoing the weight she carried inside. It was a day like any other, but something in the air felt different, almost electric, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As she rounded the corner near the old community center, she heard a preacher's booming voice echoing from inside a church, his voice rising above the noise of the street. His words cut through the air, strong and unwavering, full of faith and power. There was something magnetic about the way he spoke, as if every syllable carried a promise, a hope that things could be different. He preached with so much conviction and purpose, painting pictures in the air as he spoke of things unseen. It was as if he was speaking directly to her. He was talking about how Jesus still got the power to break every chain, no matter how heavy, no matter how long you've been dragging it behind you. He spoke of burdens that weighed on the soul, addiction, heartbreak, loneliness, fear, and how none of them were too great for the love of God to overcome. The preacher's voice rose and fell like a song, each word a note in a melody of hope. He told stories of people who had been set free, who had found light in the darkest places, who had discovered strength they never knew they had. His words wrapped around the crowd like a warm embrace, inviting them to believe that freedom was possible, that change could come, even for them. He spoke of chains that weren't always visible, chains of doubt, of shame, of regret. He said, "Sometimes the things that bind us ain't on the outside, but deep inside where nobody else can see. But Jesus sees. He knows what you're carrying, and he's got the power to loose you from whatever's holding you back." The women in the crowd closed their eyes, some with tears streaming down their faces, hands lifted in surrender, reaching for something greater than themselves. Hope flickered in their eyes, a fragile flame fighting against the winds of despair. The preacher's words seemed to reach right into her heart, stirring memories of pain she'd tried to bury, struggles she'd faced alone in the quiet of her room. He said, "Y'all, if you've been dealing with that same pain, that same struggle, day after day, night after night, listen to me now. You ain't alone. You ain't forgotten. There's a love that's bigger than your pain, a power that's stronger than your struggle." She felt a lump rise in her throat, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. For the first time in a long while, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was hope for her too. The preacher looked out over the crowd, his gaze gentle but fierce. "I know some of y'all been fighting battles nobody else knows about. You put on a brave face, but inside you're tired, you're weary. But I'm here to tell you, Jesus still got the power to set you free. He ain't lost his strength. He ain't turned his back. He's right here, right now, ready to break those chains, to lift those burdens, to give you a new start." The crowd murmured in agreement, some nodding, others whispering prayers under their breath. The woman felt something shift inside her, a glimmer of hope breaking through the clouds of her doubt. The preacher's voice softened, but his words carried even more weight. "If you believe, just reach out. You ain't gotta have it all together. You ain't gotta be perfect. Just reach out and he gon' loose you from whatever got you tied up. Don't let fear hold you back. Don't let shame keep you silent. There's freedom waiting for you, right here, right now." The woman closed her eyes, lifting her hands just a little, feeling the warmth of hope settle over her like sunlight after a long storm. In that moment, surrounded by strangers and the sound of the preacher's voice, she dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be free too. Tasha paused. She felt that tug in her spirit. For the first time in a long while, she hesitated, then stepped closer. She was skeptical, but, something about that message touched her heart. Maybe, just maybe, it was her moment. That night, Tasha found herself alone in her small apartment. The only sounds, the distant hum of city traffic and the occasional creak of the old building settling. The room was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls, echoing the heaviness she felt inside. She sat on her worn-out couch, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to hold together the pieces of her heart. The weight of the day pressed down on her, and the silence felt almost suffocating. She glanced around at the familiar space, her favorite mug on the coffee table, a stack of unopened mail, the faded photograph of her mother on the shelf. Everything seemed to remind her of how alone she truly was. With a deep, shaky breath, Tasha slid off the couch and knelt on the floor, the carpet rough beneath her knees. She closed her eyes, shutting out the world, and tried to find the words to pray. But tonight, it wasn't about the words. It was about the ache in her chest, the longing for something more, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, someone was listening. She pressed her hands together, fingers trembling, and let her heart speak in the silence. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered her fears, her hopes, and her pain into the darkness, hoping they would reach beyond the ceiling, beyond the night, to a God she wasn't even sure was there. The tears came freely now, hot and silent, tracing paths down her cheeks. She poured out her doubts and fears, her voice barely more than a whisper. "God, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you hear me, but I'm so tired. I'm so scared." She remembered the preacher's words from earlier that day, words about hope, about freedom, about a love that never lets go. But all she could feel was the ache of disappointment, the sting of promises broken by people she trusted. She wondered if God was any different, if he could really do what the preacher said. Could he really set her free from the pain that clung to her like a shadow? Could he really love someone as broken as her? Memories flooded her mind. Moments when she'd reached out for help and found only emptiness. Times when she'd trusted and been let down, when she'd felt invisible and abandoned. She thought of her childhood, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, the days she'd put on a brave face for the world. She remembered the loneliness that seemed to follow her everywhere, the sense that she was always on the outside looking in. The pain was almost too much to bear, and for a moment, she wondered if it would ever end. But even in the midst of her sorrow, a small, fragile hope flickered inside her. A hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. And so, with a voice trembling but determined, Tasha whispered into the quiet, "God, if you're real, if you can really set me free, then do it. I need you. I can't do this on my own anymore. I'm tired of pretending, tired of running, tired of feeling like I'm not enough. If you're out there, if you care, please show me. Please help me." As she spoke, something inside her shifted, a sense of release, a letting go of the burdens she'd carried for so long. She didn't know what would happen next, or if anything would change. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. She stayed there, kneeling in the quiet, letting her tears fall, her heart open, waiting for an answer. As she prayed, she felt a warm presence. It was like a gentle whisper in her soul, a reassurance that she was not alone. In that moment, she felt a shift, a flicker of hope, a glimmer of faith. She remembered the preacher's words, "Woman, thou art loosed." Suddenly, y'all, a wave of emotion hit her. Tears just streamed down her face. She felt lighter, almost as if chains had been lifted off her shoulders. She knew somehow that she was no longer trapped by her past. She was being set free. From that day on, everything began to change. She started to walk with confidence. She smiled more often, you know? She reconnected with her friends and family. She found a new job, something that gave her purpose. Slowly, she was living her life anew, no longer defined by pain and hardship, but by faith and hope. There were days when doubts crept back in. Old habits and memories tried to pull her down. Marcus, her ex, tried to remind her of what she used to be, but she refused to go back. She remembered that moment of prayer, that moment of divine encounter. She clung to her faith, knowing that Jesus had loosed her from every chain. And as she walked in her newfound freedom, she began to share her story. She told others about how faith had turned her life around. She declared that no matter how long you've been stuck, Jesus can loose you too. All it takes is belief, faith that he is able, and a willingness to receive his grace. One day she stood before her church congregation and shared her testimony. Her voice was filled with power and gratitude. She said, "I was trapped, bound by pain, by doubt, by fear. But Jesus, he loosed me. He broke every chain. And if he did it for me, he can do it for you." Her story became a beacon of hope for others who felt lost and broken. She reminded everyone that the same Jesus who loosed her is still in the business of setting people free today. So if you're out there listening, feeling like you've been in that prison for too long, hear this. Jesus is still in the business of loosing chains. He's still got the power to set you free. All you gotta do is believe, reach out to him in faith, and watch how he will turn your life around. Because the truth is, no matter how long you've been stuck, you are not too far gone. You are not forgotten. Jesus sees you, hears you, and he's ready to loose you today. Remember, woman, thou art loose.